The Christian faith has always focused on the crucifixion and resurrection of Jesus, but the crucifixion, by which Jesus died nailed to a cross, is an event open to historical investigation in a way the resurrection has never been. When the apostles first claimed that Jesus had been raised from the dead, they meant that God had raised him from the underworld of the dead to the overworld of heaven. That's mythical or symbolic language. It belongs to the way people then saw the world. What was historical was the impact that Jesus had made on them. It convinced them that neither he nor his teaching could ever really die. This conviction came to be expressed in all sorts of stories. One of them said that his tomb had been found empty and the body had gone. When people began to take this story literally, it gave rise to the further story of his ascension. That said that Jesus rose bodily into heaven and disappeared behind the clouds. And in the 4th century, Christians decided they knew the exact spot where that occurred and built a church on it. Faithful pilgrims came and marveled at the indentation on the stone, said to be the last footprint Jesus left on earth. But the stories of the resurrection and the ascension, if taken literally, make no sense at all to us in our scientifically shaped view of the universe in which we now live. The heavenly places to which Jesus supposedly rose or ascended have simply disappeared from reality. That's why the resurrection and the ascension of Jesus can be adequately understood only in poetical or metaphorical terms.
And no one said this better than the Scottish theologian Gregor Smith. He said, until Christians feel free to say that the bones of Jesus may still lie in Palestine, they have not really understood the resurrection. Now, I agree with Gregor Smith, and said so in an article I wrote for the Easter edition in 1966 of the Presbyterian Journal. Inadvertently, it sparked off a controversy so widespread that it culminated in the so-called heresy trial, in which I was charged with doctrinal error and disturbing the peace of the church.
There was an unfortunate misconception about what the debate was really about. The Doctrine Committee treated it as a question of, did Jesus rise from the dead or not? Now, that's not what I was denying. I never said Jesus didn't rise from the dead. I said, what did it really mean to say he rose from the dead? The things got worse the following year because I was asked to preach at the inaugural service of the Victoria University academic year, and in the course of this I questioned whether we humans have immortal souls. And this once again raised the question of what happens to us when we die. Is there such a thing as life after death? And because of what had happened the year before, things exploded immediately. And at this stage, in 1967, everybody up and down the country, not only in the churches, but even in the bars and around, were discussing what happens to you when you die. So it's a period of great excitement, really, very interesting in many ways. I wished I hadn't quite been the centre of it, but nevertheless it was good to have such theological talk going on. And that, of course, eventually led to the so-called heresy trial at the end of 1967, when two of my critics brought charges of doctrinal error and disturbing the peace of the church against me.
It is therefore submitted that the Assembly should consider these matters and clarify the situation by determining whether the points of doctrine apparently denied by Principal Geering are or are not of the substance of the Scriptures. And if Professor Geering admits that he cannot affirm such beliefs, or if he will not do so and does not hope to restore in the Church the peace and unity which he has disturbed, then this Assembly should censure him in an appropriate manner.
I would like to suggest that what my accusers have been pleased to call the peace of the Church is more properly called the sleepiness of the Church. And we should be thankful to God that it has been disturbed.
The faith of Principal Geering, this faith of cultural development and discovery, is nothing but an intellectually conceited mockery of the real Christian faith.
What we would like to know, and it is important because of the very great influence which he exercises from his official position, is whether Professor Geering himself believes, with the New Testament and the Christian hope, that when this universe is no more, Christian believers will continue their personal life in the presence of the living God.
What are we to make of death? We learn the answer to this by turning back to the heart of the Christian faith. It was not the dead Jesus who was acclaimed as risen, but the crucified Jesus. Some people seem to think that Jesus went willingly to the cross because he knew that within 36 hours he would be in glory. That I believe to be a grave travesty of the meaning of the cross. Jesus was ready to give himself completely, and he did not give himself completely if he expected shortly to live again.
People in the churches and the pews often had little idea of what was going on theologically. The reason for that is that the church didn't have any kind of organ within the church to disseminate theological thought. The sermon isn't the proper place to do it on the whole. The sermon is meant to be inspirational.
Naturally, I hope the Assembly will see its way clear to dismiss these charges and express no less than full confidence in the way I have been dealing with the position of responsibility entrusted to me. It has been reported to me that there is a rumour circulating that I intend to resign because I have been offered another post. There is no foundation for this. I doubt if any church would want me. And at the moment, even if there were a choice, I would prefer to serve the church from which I have received most.
The General Assembly, as its practice, is to act as a kind of judge and jury, listening to the charges and then deciding what to do about them. And they eventually decided that the charges had not been proved, and so they dismissed the case, and I was, in effect, exonerated. But it didn't really satisfy, of course, my critics, who were very vociferous kind of group, and so the tension went on.